Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, it is Tuesday, so I'm joined by Mr. Jon Chai for Tactical Tuesday. How you doing, sir?
Doing okay. Got a little COVID, just like you.
Yay! COVID twins. Exciting. It's a good thing that we took out the bit that we recorded like a week and a half ago about the meetup game and how great everything was, because it did not it did not go down. There was no meetup game. Las Vegas was pretty much a bust for me. Flew in, felt jet lagged and tired. We went to Jonas Brothers concert, which is always the nail in the coffin. Jonas Brothers. That's when you know things are about to go poorly. Not really. The concert was really good, except I was very tired and quite had some nice edibles as well. So it was a bit much. We had great seats. We were very close. And it was really hard for my brain to keep up with all of the shiny lights blinking and the loud music. I was pretty awestruck the whole concert.
Old man now.
Pretty much. I think my days of following the boy bands around the world are officially at a close. But yes, Las Vegas, I've had better experiences in my life. Day 2 through the rest were just spent in a hotel room with COVID. So, and then subsequently, everybody who was in my contact list in my phone also got COVID at the same time. And I think the WSOP this year is struggling with
sounds like a lot
COVID.
of people, at least just scrolling through Twitter, it looks like a lot of people at the WSOP have gotten COVID. So
yeah. Who would have thought a bunch of people all touching the same chips and then touching their mouths and stuff? That would be a breeding ground. But there's always next year, as they say. So
another way you could think about it is it's good to get it out of the way early in the series, then not have to sweat it and just be.
For who?
Well, I mean,
for me, I'm not going back to Vegas.
I'm saying the people who are grinding a real WSOP schedule.
Oh, you mean those
most
people. That they're not me, John. This doesn't affect my life. It's great for them, but means nothing for me. So maybe next year we'll do the first RPG meetup game if I can fade COVID. So with all of that said, your two infected hosts for the week going to be breaking down some hands. What is the theme?
Pocket Kings.
Boom. Just something that two COVID-addled minds could cobble together for Tactical Tuesday. Pocket Kings. What's so special about these two?
Not much. I mean, the first hand I think is more of a I don't have too many questions about. I think it's just a good example of how to play kings when you flop top set. And then the second hand is the usual, I need help on the river. Somehow with kings.
Yeah. So you need help with kings on the river. Let's break down this first hand. So
sure. It's 500 zoom.
Yeah. You have two kings in the big blind.
Yep. Middle position opens to 2.5 big blinds. Seems pretty standard. He starts the hand with $675-ish. So I don't know. If anything, just label him as a reg for now. I threw bet to $55 and middle position calls. I think everything looks pretty normal for pre-flop.
Yeah. You've got around 100 big blinds.
Yeah. I started the hand with about 100 big blinds. Dream flop, king 9-7 rainbow. Um, Generally, when I flop top set, especially on these really, really dry boards, going to be going for a really, really small C bet. Just want the in position player to be able to continue with a very, very wide range. Hopefully, lots of stuff that's just drawing dead or close to dead. So I C bet really small, middle position calls, and then we get the 5 of hearts turn.
Yeah, so the flop, by the way, for the podcast listener, the flop was king 9-7 rainbow. So Jack 10, possible double gut shot, 8-10, and I don't think 6-8 is really in range. 7s and 9s would also be sets, but I would say in general, most of the hands are going to be like Jack 10, Queen Jack, those category of hands, Queen 10 suited, and then some like backdoor type hands that call the flop.
I mean, I think for a quarter pot, there can be like tons of backdoor type hands that call the flop. Like, I think most 8x is going to feel compelled to call. I think like a hand like ace 10 of hearts or ace 10 of diamonds or, ace 10 of spades, any of those with like the backdoors and, potentially an overcard are all going to call a quarter pot. And that's really like what I want to happen when I have a hand that's as kind of like as invulnerable as top set is.
Yeah. And there's 184 in the pot, by the way. What do all those hands have in common, right? They have in common that they're not very strong. Like that's the reality when you flop top set on king 9-7. Your opponents just tend to not have super strong hands. And like if they do have a strong hand, it doesn't really matter what you do, right? If they flop a set of 9s, you could just, it doesn't matter what you do because all the money is going to go in the pot in some way. Yeah. So really you're doing a good job of targeting the lower equity hands in villain's range here that makes sense to peel with. So turns a 5 of hearts, which does put up backdoor hearts. There's 184 in the pot. You've got 447 remaining. So SPR, like 2.5-ish. And so let's talk about your turn decision here. You kept villain's range wide on the flop. They've got a bunch of lower equity type hands. So now tell me about your thought process on the turn.
So yeah, we're just following kind of that plan of like trying to keep their lower equity hands in and get value from their really, really low equity hands. Like you said, we're not worried about stacking a set or 2 pair, or honestly, even like King X is going to probably put money in on the turn or the river themselves. So just going back to how can we get money from lots of hands that are drawing dead or drawing near dead. I think when I have top set and I'm just like blocking what I would hope to be like the majority of their calling range, top pair weak kicker type hands, top pair weak kicker, top pair second kicker, top kicker type hands. I'm just going to be checking turn. And yeah, that's what I go ahead and do. I check top set on the turn, just give as much rope, as much room as I possibly can for their Jack 10s or even hands that don't have as much equity as Jack 10 to just start bluffing here.
Yeah. And they do have like a decent amount of hands that have very little equity.
Right.
And so they bet 2/3 here on the turn. And obviously, there's the decision here as to whether you should check raise, whether you should call. I think this will probably be, for the listener, an important spot to analyze and think about, and maybe a critical decision point where the audience may do something quite different than what you're going to do. And to recap, the board is king 9-7-5 with 2 hearts. Hero has top set of kings. There's 184 in the pot. Villain bets 135 on the turn. So if you did jam, there's like 300 left.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you call, there's going to be like 400 something with 300 remaining. So decent sized bet left.
Yeah, I think this spot is really similar to the spot that we had on 2 Tactical Tuesdays ago, where I flopped top set with a set of 9s on a monotone board. And we were just deciding, like, is it better to like deny equity or, just value check raise and get called by worse value hands? I think this spot is sort of similar. There definitely is equity that we can deny by jamming here. I think like, 10 Jack 10 might just fold facing check jam here. Maybe even some of their flush draws, especially just like their weaker non-combo draw flush draws, might just check fold. getting jammed on in the spot. So I do think that there is like an argument to jam in order to deny equity, but I still think that just, I'm happy to take the risk of them hitting, one of their double gutters or rivering a flush or something like that when I have a hand like top set. I mean, there's going to be times where they river a flush and the board pairs, and we just get to stack a flush anyways, despite them getting there. And then the flip side of that is that like there's still lots and lots of just absolute zero equity hands that we want them to put all the money in themselves. And I think that outweighs equity denial. And then, like you said, we don't have to worry about stacking like 7s and 9s because that money is just getting in unless, there are like a couple disaster rivers, like maybe like the 6 of hearts or the 8 of hearts where like we don't stack 9s and 7s, but that's
bro. If it's a 6 of hearts, I assume 9s and 7s are just gonna jam for value anyway.
That could still happen. So
even on the worst rivers, I think 9s and 7s still go broke because like we can have ace king, we can have 2 pair, we can have aces, etc. I think what's important for the listener is really with equity denial. When you prioritize equity denial, what you're saying is that villain's likely not going to be putting money in the pot on the river unless they improve. So like that's where the value of equity denial really is. And in this situation, I think that villain has lots of incentive to bet the turn and follow up with a river jam on most runouts with most range. So denying equity is a lower priority to me in this spot than stacking and getting value from all the like 0 or very low equity type hands in villain's range, which makes this turn decision just really good in my opinion of choosing to just check call, setting up SPR of about 66%, so 0.6. You got 312. There's 454 left in the pots. The river's a 4 of spades, which is an effective brick. Doesn't really do anything. Final board's king 9 7 5 4. On the river here, you opt to go for the check, and villain goes all in. Probably not much to talk about here with top set facing the all in on the river, other than happy day. So you call. And the villain ends up with ace of diamonds, jack of spades. So they didn't have one backdoor flush draw. They had 2 fake backdoor flush draws, which is almost the equivalent of one actual backdoor flush draw.
He had a couple real backdoor straight draws.
Yeah, he did. Not on the turn, though.
Not on the turn.
And I would say probably a little loose pre-flop, but it is what it is. Nice hand though. I think it makes your check call on the turn exponentially better when they stack off with like all combos of like ace jack and ace queen. So very well played. And as we talked about on the turn, like villain did have 0 equity, right? And it's pretty much a tragedy to jam with top set and make a hand with 0 equity fold. So anything else you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to say, I think this is like obviously the hand villain, the way he played and the run out just, kind of made this seem like kind of like a dream situation. But it is really important, I think, when you are blocking like the top value on a board and the board is like super dry, like king 9 7, that, you do give your opponents like as much room to bluff as possible because they're so unlikely to be able to call like a value bet. And if they can like, play for their stacks when you have like the board locked up like this, you often have them just coolered anyways, and checking would have just resulted in you stacking them regardless. So I think it's important to just like start out like really, really small on the flop, keep their range very, very wide, and then stick to your plan on the turn in the river and let them just bomb off with their wide range.
Would you do anything differently with a set of 9s?
Yes, I think with a set of 9s I would have been way more happy about just going for the value myself, hoping that they do have enough king X now that I don't, have 2 kings in my hand. With a set of 9s, I think I likely would have started with a maybe a slightly larger flop C bet, although I don't think that matters that much. But I would have been way more. I would have thought way more seriously about just betting turn and river myself, and trying to get a hand like King Jack or King 10 that might not bet turn or river after calling a flop C bet to bluff catch.
Yeah, I think it becomes a much more interesting question about what you do with middle set. And I mean, the argument could be made that if they're floating this wide and bombing off this wide, then checking all your sets, and basically just checking range on the turn is going to be the highest performing line.
Yeah.
But all right, so another Pocket Kings coming right at you directly following the break.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding-edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right, welcome back to this very creatively themed episode of Tactical Tuesday. And looks like in the back half of the episode, you've got kings on the button, which is a good place to have kings.
It is. I'll take him anywhere.
Yeah, I think any position, anytime, any place. Yeah, we've done multiple takes of this bit, and this is by far the worst one. But guess what? You listeners get to hear our COVID-addled little bit about kings on the button and taking them anywhere. So with that glorious little segment out of the way, let's break down the action here.
So we're playing 5-10, no limit. I'm on the button with red kings. Action folds around to me. I open to $30. Small blind, who is a reg, 3 bets to 130. And I 4 bet to, I believe, 250.
Is this a standard 3-bet sizing facing 3x button open? Looks a little like one click big.
Yeah, it's a little bit big. I mean, I think I'm not surprised to see 120 or 130. I think a lot of people 3-bet to one of those two sizes. I would say anything other than 120 and 130, that would like start raising eyebrows for me. Like if I saw 110, I'd be like, that's a little small. If I saw 140, I'd be like, that's really, really big. I don't know why, but 120 and 130 are very acceptable in my mind. So.
All right. So with 130, you go ahead and 4-bet. Any thoughts of flatting the button? And your sizing here is a click, which looks pretty good to me.
I think you could flat the button. I mean, we talk about this all the time on Tactical Tuesday, trapping aces and kings, button versus blinds. I guess like personally, like I'd be a little bit more comfortable trapping aces than I would kings.
Personally, is there anybody in the audience that's like, no, I'm more comfortable flatting kings than aces?
I feel like you wouldn't care. I feel like you're totally indifferent. I'm not saying someone cares. I'm not saying someone would rather trap kings. I'm saying that I'm sure that there's people out there like you that are just like, I don't care. Aces and kings, it's like the same thing. I just trap.
Well, it's not the same. I mean, even I would prefer to have aces over kings, but if I think something is going to be the highest performing line or action, then that's the one I'm going to take. But no doubt, I would rather have aces, and the EV of flatting with aces is going to be higher than kings. I guess the bigger question is like, can the EV of flatting outperform the EV of 4-betting the kings, which I think is a much closer calculation than in most situations than aces. But here you go ahead and click it, and facing the click. I mean, does anybody ever fold facing the click?
I mean, it's just what like in position 4-bet sizes are supposed to be.
Yeah, 25 bigs. Like, I'm not saying that it's wrong or that there's anything wrong with it. I'm just asking, like,
it's really hard to fold to the in position 4-bet size, but you just have to bring yourself to make what feels like massive folds getting the price that you're getting. Because I don't know, like I think the big part is that like you just have to realize that in position player like has little incentive to bluff when they're in position and like a lot of incentive to call. So if they're putting extra money in there, it's extremely polarized, and like a lot of the hands that you probably feel like you want to call getting such a good price are just getting absolutely demolished by most of the good end of that polarization.
Yeah, I just thought of this as you said that because I do the same thing. It's like extremely polarized. Is it really an extreme, right? Isn't polarized just a good enough word in and of itself? Then like, oh no, this is extremely polarized. Like, isn't it just all the same?
I don't know. I mean, this is just like the in position player can just so easily. It's like when the big blind 3-bets or something, right? It's like, dude, you had this like very obvious, easy choice to just call, see a flop, in position. It's like a great spot to be in, play a big pot in position, whatever. But
All
instead,
right.
like you're deciding to put more money in. Like you either really want me to fold or you just have like an incredibly good hand. It's like, what? There's no like.
I tried taking us on a tangent about the language behind it, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what I'm just saying. Does a thing need to be extremely polarized? Can it just be regular polarized?
No, this is extreme.
Extreme.
When we get to a regular polar spot, I'll make sure to.
We need like different words for these things. Antarctica, I don't know, something extremely polar, right? Versus like, you're like in northern Canada, right? It's like
just use like latitude numbers to talk about where we are.
Yeah, there you go. So with all that said, if you guys remember, we have a hand that's going down here where we're extremely polarized with our click on the button. We 4-bet to 25 big blinds, so $250 with kings, 100 big blinds deep. Everything is pretty normal right now. There's 510 in the pot. We have 750 behind. Villain's got 740, so SPR is a little bit more than 1. The flop is Jack 5 deuce rainbow, so Jack of spades, 5 of diamonds, deuce of clubs. And small blind starts out as small blinds tend to do in these spots with a check. And you start out by betting, looks to be like a fifth pot, so 20% or so. You bet $100. Any thoughts behind this sizing here?
Not too much thought. I mean, as anyone who's watched me play 4-bet pots on Tactical Tuesday will know, this is like tiny c-bet. It's just going to be my go-to with value and air as the pre-flop 4-better. And so, I mean, when you have value in the spot like we do, so I'll just talk about that side for now. It's just, there's very little concern about being able to get your stack in by the river in a 4-bet pot. I basically have like just over 1-to-1 SPR on the flop as it is. So, any size bet on the flop instantly basically just makes it a 1 SPR of 1, which, you can comfortably jam on the river, or you can, bet tiny on the turn again and jam the river, or you can just jam the turn. So I think this size just opens up a lot of options and kind of keeps your range. Is the easiest way to manage your range as the pre-flop 4-better.
Yeah, I agree. So you bet a quarter, villain calls, and now we see a turn. Turns an overcard, a queen. So the board is now queen, jack, 5 deuce, full rainbow. Villain checks, and you go ahead and check behind.
Yep. I think, like I said, on the flop, I do check behind on the turn. Like I said, on the flop, I think I can go pretty much any which way I want now that the SPR is slightly less than 1. I still have an overpair on queen, jack, 5 deuce with my pocket kings. I can jam the river. I can bluff catch river. I think betting here is obviously still an option. I don't know about jamming here. I think if I were to bet here, I'd probably just bet small and jam the river. So yeah, I decided to take the check back and bluff catch or jam river myself option.
Yeah, I think jamming goes up in value if the turn's like the queen of spades, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Or the queen of clubs or the queen of diamonds that gives you available flush draws to have in range.
Yep,
I think it's important, the suit of this turn. So checking behind, very reasonable. The river pairs the board. It is a jack of diamonds. So now the final board is queen, jack, jack, 5 deuce. No flush available. There's 710 in the pot. Villain has 640. And they bet approximately $640. So they wager the rest of their remaining chips in this 4-bet pot. And now you're at a decision point here on the river.
Yeah, I was not super excited to see this. I just have trouble thinking of like pure bluffs, I guess, for villain. I think the value is pretty easy. Like they just have lots and lots of Jack X. Of like maybe they have Jack 10 suited. They probably have Queen Jack suited. Almost certainly have King Jack and Ace Jack suited. Which I guess aren't, at the end of the day, isn't that many combinations when two Jacks are already out there and they only have the suited ones and maybe not even Jack 10. But yeah, I thought that like for this call to be profitable, like they would have to also be like turning some pairs into bluffs, like maybe like tens, nines. Some of the more obvious bluff candidates, I think, are like is a hand like Ace 10 of diamonds, Ace 10 of clubs, Ace 10 of spades. I think those suited Ace X's probably do call a 4-bet, call a quarter pot on the flop, and then feel like they are pretty natural bluffs on the river once they don't have anything. Are there any other hands that you think I'm missing out on? Sorry.
Can Ace Queen jam for value?
So in game, this is what I thought, that Ace Queen might not jam the river for value, thinking that like I just have a Jack a lot when my hand plays like this, when I bet the flop, check back on an overcard, and then what was top pair on the flop trips on the river. I think a reasonable way for a hand like Ace Queen to think about that spot is that you're getting stacked by all the Jack X anyways. Like maybe just put my bluff catchers in a spot when I do have pocket tens in the spot. At least like try to get called by that sometimes. That being said, after the game, after this hand happened, I did a little bit more thinking, and I actually don't have any Jack X in my 4-betting range.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah.
So you've basically got quads and queens full,
right?
Which would be your traps.
Yeah. So
I mean,
now that I think of that, like I don't think that jamming Ace Queen here is unreasonable. Like I think that's what you should be doing. I don't know.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. It's more of a matter of like, how are you structuring your bluffs? I think like if you're going for, the stop and go, then checking Ace Queen makes a lot of sense since, you're going to have some like Ace 10 offs, I guess, and Ace King offs.
Yeah.
That those would be your major bluff candidates,
right.
I think, on the river, which are not super unreasonable to like jam facing a river check. So I mean, I think there is still some value in checking Ace Queen to get value from your bluffs. I don't think that you don't have trips in your range. I think it's a tricky situation. I think it's good that you have the king of hearts, so that villains
King Jack suited.
There's only one combo of King Jack suited left. That's King Jack of clubs. And also it gives them more available like King X with backdoors to peel with on the flop. So you're not like double blocking their suited King 10.
We want them to have like the King of spades, and King of clubs.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a good thing. I just can't imagine folding like facing the jam. It just seems, while we don't have many Jack X in our range, I don't think villains got like a ton in theirs. They do have like all the Ace 10s, all for available bluffs, and maybe some like King 10s as well. I guess King 10's probably stretching it.
Yeah.
They can jam with Ace Queen and value own themselves. So basically we beat value on the river. Just hard to fold.
Yeah. It's hard to fold whenever you beat value, I guess. Just period. Yeah.
Yeah. In general.
Wow, you made it seem like it was a much easier call than it felt in game. I felt like I spaz called the river. I was like, I don't know. I have an overpair.
I don't know. Overpair call.
Yeah.
It's not the worst spaz reasoning that I've ever heard. What did villain have? I guess we'll see. They had Ace Queen.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't know the result of this hand. We talked about it beforehand. I didn't know that what villain had on the river, but I guess Ace Queen does make some sense.
Do you think that I should put a bet in on the turn, just continue betting turn, especially on this turn? Because like you said, my bluffs pre-flop are going to be hands like Ace King and Ace 10. And I have to imagine that if I did have one of those hands, I would likely just bet the turn once I turn and got shot.
Then I think betting the turn small is like
Right.
very reasonable.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Very, very reasonable. Bet turn small, jam river.
Yeah.
I think like it's probably easier to extract 2 small bets than 1 big bet.
Yep.
In the case of villain having, some kind of bluff catcher.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that said, again, like you said, with the setup on the flop, like you can do whatever you want after betting the flop at a quarter. But I mean, from like an efficiency standpoint and an EV standpoint, betting the turn and jamming the river might just outperform checking back the turn and bluff catching river or jamming yourself.
I think if I could play this hand again, I would just bet the turn, like mostly because I would just think like, oh, I'm probably going to get a lot of credit for continuing to bluff this turn because they might just think that I turn like some sort of gut shot, at least with all my bluffs that are going to want to keep barreling. So like I just get called, maybe just tens just keeps calling down, or none of their jack X folds. Not that I think
tens is a real bad one.
Yeah.
Like they'd much rather have nines.
Yeah,
Tens,
I guess. Okay,
tens is probably just like a jam pre small blind versus button 4-bet anyway.
Yeah.
So I think nines is probably the candidate that you're targeting.
Right.
Before the jack pairs, though, you could target their jack X, like ace jack, jack 10, king jack, those type of hands. And it's possible that like even on the overcard turn, ace jack just kind of shrugs and calls down.
Right. Yeah. To be results oriented, though, I'm glad that I did not bet the turn because I think that would just have resulted in me betting the turn, the small blind likely just calling, and then I think the river goes check quite frequently.
Wow.
So,
what a baby.
Oh my god.
Not gonna
Dude, I almost folded kings on the river. You think I'm gonna value bet them once the jack pairs? I can't even bring myself to call confidently.
But they can have ace queen, John.
That's it. That's it.
That's a lot. It's a lot of combos. One ace queen off equals lots of jack
combos.
10 suited.
Yeah. Okay.
Jack 10 suited is 2 combos, right? Like king jack is 1 and ace jack is 2. So there's still plenty to go around.
All right. And I also have to be sure that they're gonna just stack off with ace queen like every time. Why?
Come on, what world are we living in here?
Yeah.
If somebody folds ace queen here, then they deserve. I don't know what they deserve. Some props on Tactical Tuesday. I don't know what they value. Like, I don't know who they are as a person.
Clearly not money.
All right. Well, good episode of Tactical Tuesday this week. It's good. Getting back in the groove of things. The groove of other things was not a very good groove to be in. So, yeah, one more week and we'll sound like normal, functional human beings once again. That's all I have for today's episode.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.